He only had $100 in his pocket, and tonight it felt like the weight of the world. Marcus tightened the knot on his thrift store tie, glanced one last time in the cracked bathroom mirror, and whispered to himself, "You got this." For years, his life had been nothing but responsibility, 2 jobs, bills stacked like bricks, and his 7-year-old daughter Ava depending on him for everything. Romance had been pushed so far away it almost felt like a myth, but tonight was different. Tonight, he was taking a chance on a blind date. Every dollar mattered. He had counted, recounted, and folded that 100 neatly into his wallet like it was treasure. He promised Ava he'd try something new, that maybe this step could lead to a brighter future. She had smiled, told him he looked like a superhero, and with that innocent encouragement, he walked into a restaurant far fancier than anywhere he'd been in years. When he spotted Tasha waiting at the table, he inhaled sharply. She was stylish, radiant, her nails gleaming under the soft lights. For a moment, Marcus thought maybe fate was being kind. He approached with a warm smile, offering a handshake that she returned casually before sitting back in her chair. The evening began with small talk, but almost immediately the imbalance showed. She scanned the menu with sparkling eyes, pointing out dishes like lobster ravioli and a bottle of wine without once glancing at Marcus's nervous expression. He swallowed hard, doing math in his head while pretending to study the same menu. "Anything catch your eye?" Marcus asked, his voice steady despite the storm inside. "I think I'll try this, and maybe the wine too," Tasha replied smoothly, flagging down the waiter before Marcus had even finished reading that. He nodded politely, choosing something modest, all while clutching invisible strings that kept his budget intact. He wasn't here to show off wealth, he was here because deep down, he hoped for kindness, understanding, maybe a partner who could see past the number in his bank account. As the plates arrived, conversation deepened. Marcus spoke with quiet pride about his daughter, how she loved drawing superheroes, how she asked him every night to read her stories. His eyes lit up when he described her laughter, his shoulders straightening with the kind of strength only a devoted father knows, but Tasha's responses were lukewarm. She smiled faintly, then steered the conversation back toward vacations, luxury cars, and how her last boyfriend used to spoil her with shopping sprees. Marcus kept his expression calm, but inside he felt smaller and smaller. He chewed each bite slowly, buying himself seconds to collect dignity, to stop himself from showing just how much her dismissive tone hurt. At the next table, an older gentleman sat quietly, watching with thoughtful eyes. He noticed the humility in Marcus's posture, the way he nodded politely even when spoken to like he wasn't enough. He noticed how Marcus never once snapped, never once let embarrassment turn into anger. Instead, Marcus kept his dignity intact, even when Tasha's eyes rolled at his mention of working delivery shifts or fixing cars on weekends. The evening dragged in a way that tested patience. Every time the waiter returned, Tasha added something, dessert, another drink, without hesitation. Marcus's hand brushed his wallet under the table, heart pounding with each silent calculation. He didn't want to show weakness, but numbers don't lie. He was in trouble, and he knew it. Finally, the check arrived. Marcus's eyes froze on the bold numbers, $184.50. His stomach dropped. He felt heat crawling up his neck, shame biting hard into his chest. He only had 100. Not enough. Not even close. Tasha leaned back, sipping the last of her wine, oblivious. Marcus reached for his wallet slowly, preparing himself for humiliation, wondering if he'd have to confess, wondering if this night that began with hope would end in crushing embarrassment. His fingers touched the folded bill when the waiter smiled and spoke softly. "Sir, your bill has already been taken care of." Marcus blinked, confused. "I'm sorry, what?" The waiter nodded with a calm grin. "No need to worry. Someone wanted to cover it for you." Marcus looked around, heart racing. "Who? Why?" At the next table, the older gentleman gave the slightest nod before returning to his glass of water. It was subtle, almost as if he didn't want recognition, but Marcus felt the unspoken kindness like a lifeline pulling him from drowning. Tasha's tone shifted instantly. "Oh, so you've got connections here?" she asked with sudden sweetness, her eyes widening as if reassessing Marcus. For the first time all night, her smile seemed interested. Marcus forced a polite chuckle, but inside he knew the truth. Someone had seen him, truly seen him, and decided to step in. Not because of status or charm, but because of something deeper. As they left the restaurant, Marcus's mind swirled. Relief, gratitude, confusion. He couldn't shake the image of that man's quiet nod, couldn't shake the idea that maybe, just maybe, tonight wasn't about failure, it was about something far greater waiting just beyond the horizon, and so the night ended not with the weight of humiliation but with a spark of mystery. A stranger's kindness had shifted the story, and Marcus walked into the night unaware of how deeply his life was about to change. Marcus lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling in his small apartment, the weight of what had happened still pressing against his chest. He couldn't forget the moment the waiter told him the bill was covered, or the quiet nod from the man at the next table. Gratitude swirled with confusion, and in the stillness he whispered to himself, "Why me?" Ava's soft breathing in the next room reminded him what really mattered, but his thoughts refused to settle. Morning light crept in, and as Marcus prepared breakfast, a small card slipped from his jacket pocket. It was crisp, white, and bore only a name and number, Mr. Reynolds. The stranger had somehow placed it there, unseen. Marcus hesitated, his fingers trembling as he read it again and again. Wealth radiated from that name, but what struck Marcus more was the quiet humanity in the man's eyes the night before. Still, doubt gnawed at him. Why would someone like that want to speak with someone like him? For hours he carried the card in his pocket while delivering packages, every stop reminding him of the limitations of his life. By evening, exhaustion and curiosity pushed him to dial the number. A calm voice answered, inviting him to come by the office the next morning. Marcus agreed, though uncertainty gnawed at every word. The next day he walked into a towering glass building, his second-hand shoes clicking nervously against the polished floor. People in suits rushed past him, and the receptionist raised an eyebrow when he gave his name, but within minutes Mr. Reynolds appeared, shaking his hand firmly with a warmth that put Marcus at ease. "I'm glad you came," the older man said. "Let's talk." They sat together in a spacious office, but there was no air of intimidation. Instead, Mr. Reynolds leaned forward like a father speaking to a son. "I watched you last night," he began, his voice steady. Most men would have snapped under that kind of pressure. You didn't. You carried yourself with respect, even when you were being belittled. That's rare. Marcus lowered his eyes, embarrassed, but the man continued. "I started with nothing. I was a single father too. People laughed at me, dismissed me, and I promised myself I'd never judge a man by his wallet." Marcus swallowed hard. He confessed the truth, how he had come with only $100, how he had prayed not to be humiliated, how every decision he made was tied to giving his daughter a better life. His voice cracked when he mentioned Ava, and for the first time in years, he allowed another man to see the weight of his struggle. Reynolds listened without interruption. When Marcus finished, silence filled the room for a moment before the older man slid a folder across the desk. "I believe in giving people with heart and character a chance. This is a position at one of my companies. Manager in training. It won't be easy, but I think you're built for it. What do you say?" Marcus stared at the folder, hands shaking. It felt unreal, almost cruel to dangle hope so bright. But Mr. Reynolds's eyes were steady, unwavering. "Why me?" Marcus whispered, "Because the world needs more men who won't let hardship steal their dignity," Mr. Reynolds replied simply. That night Marcus walked home clutching the folder. He stopped outside the door, listening to Ava laugh with the neighbor inside, and tears streamed down his face. For the first time in years, he saw a path beyond survival, a chance not just to scrape by but to thrive. Weeks turned into months. Marcus threw himself into the new job, learning quickly, proving himself every day. Long hours didn't feel like a burden because they carried purpose. He began to shed the doubt that had haunted him for so long, standing taller, walking with confidence he never thought he'd possess. Colleagues respected him, and for once, he felt like he belonged in rooms he used to avoid. Ava noticed the changes too. She hugged him tighter each night, proud of the new sparkle in his eyes. The little apartment soon gave way to a modest home where she had her own room filled with colors and books. Marcus still cooked simple meals and wore old shoes until they wore thin, but now he did it by choice, not necessity. He wanted Ava to know humility even as their lives improved. Then, months later, fate brought an unexpected twist. Marcus spotted Tasha at a cafe, her laughter echoing across the room. She noticed him too, but the man standing before her was no longer the nervous father clutching $100. He wore a suit that fit perfectly, his shoulders squared with quiet pride. Her eyes widened, curiosity flashing as she walked over. "Marcus? Wow, you look different." He smiled politely, nodding. "Life's been good." She tilted her head, voice softening with sudden interest. "Maybe we should catch up sometime." Marcus looked at her, remembering every moment of that dinner, the dismissive tone, the way she had measured his worth by the thickness of his wallet. For a moment he considered the irony, but then he shook his head gently. "I don't think that's a good idea. Take care of yourself." And with that, he walked away, leaving her stunned. Outside, Ava ran into his arms, her backpack bouncing as she shouted, "Daddy." He lifted her high, laughter spilling out, the kind that comes only when burdens have finally lifted. As the sun dipped low, Marcus thought about the journey. A single night, one act of kindness, and everything had changed. He didn't just find opportunity, he found proof that dignity and perseverance could open doors money never could. Holding Ava's hand, he whispered, "You're my reason, baby girl. Always." She smiled and replied, "And you're my hero, Daddy." In that moment, Marcus knew the truth: sometimes life doesn't shift through grand gestures or perfect plans. Sometimes it takes a stranger's quiet kindness to turn despair into hope, to remind you that no matter how heavy the struggle, character will always speak louder than circumstances. And as he walked forward, hand in hand with his daughter, Marcus carried not just the weight of responsibility but the light of a future brighter than he had ever dared to imagine.